Hello and welcome to my grease pencil tutorial. I'm completely self-taught with Blender and learned how to use grease pencil from YouTube tutorials. I'll have some of my favorites linked in the description. Over the past year and a half, I've developed my own workflow. So here's my streamlined version for beginners. First off, we're going to open Blender and start out in a general file. You can also do the 2D animation file, but I tend to like to work in general. It gives us a default cube, light, and camera. We're going to delete the default cube and the light, but keep the camera. Then we'll go into Add, and we're going to add an empty grease pencil object. We don't see anything now because it's empty. Then we're going to go into Draw mode. First, we're going to add some stuff that'll make it easier for us to know where we're drawing since it's empty right now. We're going to toggle onion skin on for animating, and then also enable the canvas and also change our view to front. You can also change that to side or top. Now we can see what plane we're drawing on, which is a really important factor. You can also do things where you're not drawing on a specific plane, but for what I do, I like to be specific. I want to have a straight on angle so that we can see what we're drawing within the plane that our camera can see, so I'm moving it back a little bit. My favorite brush is the ink pen rough. I just really like the way that it looks. And now we can see our brush stroke, which is three-dimensional but also flat. I like to think that it is a flat object, but it exists in three-dimensional space. Let's just start out by drawing a little guy. What's really nice about grease pencil is that it's vectorized, so it's a really nice line quality even if you zoom in super far. And then for the erasers, I tend to use eraser stroke and eraser point. This one erases the entire stroke, and this one gets rid of little bits and pieces. And now we can go into Edit mode. Edit mode will let us manipulate the vector lines that we just created through the Draw mode. You can get really specific with this editing, or you can just select specific lines and move them around. I typically use the second option, which is just moving the entire line. I'm a little happier with that face now. I feel like these arms could be a little longer, so I'm adjusting them here like this. In Edit mode, you can also rotate and use the scale feature. We can also scale the entire drawing through the Edit mode, which is a very different thing than scaling it in the Object mode. The Edit mode scaling is affecting this specific instance as opposed to the object itself. More on that later. Let's take a look at the timeline that they give us. You can also use the dope sheet, but I tend to use the timeline. Now we can see that the onion skin is working. I have the auto keyframe on, so as soon as I start drawing on a new frame, it will automatically start a new frame for me. So to show off what you can do with grease pencil, I'm just going to do a very simple animation of this little stick figure. So now we've got a second frame, which will help show the difference between changing scale in Edit mode and Object mode. In Edit mode, the scale is affecting just this specific drawn instance. Let's switch to Object mode now. I can also toggle off outline selected and relationship lines, though I tend to like that so I know what's selected at any given moment. Adjusting the scale in Object mode affects both drawings because it's within the object's properties. Anyway, now we can get back to animating. By selecting Shift-D, I can duplicate that first drawing, so I have my little stick guy going from up to down to back up. I can scrub through this to look at it without the onion skin. Now I'm adding some simple overlap on the arms as the character stands back up. Another great feature that I love about grease pencil is the Sculpt mode. This presents the opportunity to kind of liquefy your drawings, and it's still nice and vectorized for you, so this is really great for animatics. I use this a lot to just slightly make a change in things for animation. You can also just very slightly move things from pose to pose if you want. Now by using both the Edit and Sculpt mode, we have a very crude animation, but we're starting to get a little bit of flow and appeal between those simple poses. You can also adjust how long the timeline goes without looping, so we can review our progress more efficiently. For loops, a little trick that I do is adding the frame before it loops, right before it starts over again, so that it's a smooth transition and you can see the next frame. Instead of just doing a bend down, we're going to have him actually jump in the air, so let's adjust the legs for that. And now I'm just basically in-betweening. And when he lands, I'm going to have the arms come in a little bit, because physics or something. And now let's add a stroke fill to the character in the Materials tab. Grease pencil coloring works similar to Toon Boom Harmony, where you have a color selected but you can change the color itself once you have the lines down. The two options you have for this are stroke and fill. We've been working in stroke, so here's an example of just simple lines. We can turn off everything that exists in that specific color. We also have layers. By clicking the plus option, a layer auto adds on top. So if we're doing something behind the character, we're going to have to move that down. We can see that things are appearing slightly behind, and if we open in our summary of our timeline, we can see each layer. I recommend locking the layers you're not working in, so that you don't accidentally work on the wrong layer. Though, because things are vectorized, it is a lot easier to go back and fix things when you can just select things in edit mode. So instead of stroke, we're going to change that white layer to fill, and we can select virtually any color from here, but we're just going to stick with white. What I enjoy is this works kind of like a lasso fill, so you can actively see what is being filled. I colored an entire film using this method. There's also a paint bucket tool feature that you can use, but I tend to like doing it manually. We used Sculpt Mode to manipulate these frames initially, and we can also do that for the fill layers. For example, this one we'll just start over again, and we'll squash that one down too. And if there's overlap, you can try erasing it slightly. It does get finicky with the fill if you're trying to erase an edge, so that's why I use the sculpt normally for the fill objects. And I'll just go through each frame doing the same thing. Here's an example of me trying to use the fill bucket. Granted, I never learned how to use it, so I'm sure other people can do it more productively. I just feel like it's more finicky, and I typically don't have closed lines, so I tend to just go with the manual. And now we can watch it playing together. Next, we're going to move things around a bit because he's jumping out of the frame. We can do a little 360 on him, which once again shows that it's a flat object, but existing in 3D space. And you can do a lot of camera tricks to make things look like they are 3D. To export or render, we'll go into the Output tab and set the file format to a video, and the encoding to MPEG-4. You'll also want to set the output location and file name, as it will automatically set it to temp. For simple stuff, I'll just play blast it with Viewport Render Animation under the View tab. However, to officially render, click Render Animation under the Render tab. I personally love using Blender because it's perfectly suited to my workflow and my 2.5D approach to animation. I also really appreciate that it's open source. A lot of people have approached me with apprehensive interest in learning the program, and Grease Pencil specifically, so I hope this tutorial makes people's workflow more accessible and affordable. Go make some cool stuff! I have a ton of other tricks I use in Blender to make my animations. Let me know if you're interested in a part 2 with specifics, and feel free to ask follow-up questions in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this tutorial, please let me know.